The idea of a revolutionary government has again resurfaced and was immediately met with opposition. Those who challenge it say that it is a move, or it might be a move, to concentrate power in the hands of the president. The renewed push for what they call a RevGov comes at a time when government is scrambling to handle the coronavirus pandemic. Who is behind this push for a RevGov, and does it have any place in the long list of priorities that we must now address? We discuss in this episode of the Chiefs. Welcome to this Monday edition of the Chiefs, and with us right now are Ana Marie Pamintuan of the Philippine Star from the port area in Manila, and Robbie Alampay from the One News newsroom in Reliance Street. Oh, and Lucy Cruz Valdez of the head of News 5. We thought you were coming in a little later, but welcome again. Nakabot. Welcome again to One News. What are your big stories tonight?
Siyempre, yung bombing sa Hulo. Sa Hulo na dumadami pa rin yung patay.
Yeah.
Saka nag-iiba-iba yung number eh. Kaya medyo late kami ngayon.
And what makes it interesting kasi is that remember the Holo shooting ng June 29, the Army Intel operatives who were involved in that shooting, who were the victims of that shooting, were supposed to be tailing what they suspected to be a female suicide bomber of the Abu Sayyaf.
Oo nga eh.
Yeah.
So ngayon, isang suicide bomber, apparently suicide bomber, babae nga.
Babae na naman.
Yung isa.
Nangyari rin yan dun sa cathedral bombing noon eh, di ba?
Oo nga eh.
Babae rin. Yeah.
But what makes it different this time?
This time, Ami, they're confirmed yun. They're definite about that. Because before, may debate pa yun.
Oo, yung isa. Yung isa babae.
But what also makes it interesting this time is now they're also going after the first responders. Kasi the first bombing, when the first bomb erupted, syempre asahan mo kasi nagdarating ng mga police sa army eh. And then that's when the second bomber came in. Kung hindi lang siya nasita, baka nakalapit pa yun dun sa concentration ng security officials.
Soldiers,
That's one of the dangers of these incidents eh. Yung may second bomb targeting the responders eh.
Parang makikita mo na sinadya na eh, no? Alam nila na okay, may first responder, so dapat may kasunod na attack.
And that might be the first time that they did it that way. Kasi before, isa-isa lang eh.
Napakarami
like yung last year sa Indanan, isa lang yung sumugod na babae or lalaki ba. But anyway, dun sa kampo isa lang yung sumugod eh. So usually pa isa-isa lang eh. Ngayon talagang magkasunod silang mukhang sila target ng same place.
Yes.
Abu Sayyaf daw eh, no? Abu Sayyaf.
Well, likely yes. It is Holo. And it's almost across the cathedral. You could see the cathedral across the park.
Right. In Carmel. Yes.
Bandaran, doon kami kumakain dati minsan eh. Malapit dun sa pinangyarihan eh.
Pero nakakatakot yan, ano? Kung magiging trend dyan, suicide bombing, the hardest na kailan to prevent.
That's relatively new in the Philippines. We only had suicide bombers relatively recently. Oh.
Yes.
Before kasi nagmamalaki ng mga Pinoy, wais yung mga Pinoy, hindi sila nagsa-suicide bombing.
And that's a big thing because part of the bigger context here is it feeds into whether you look at it as a narrative or argument, but it feeds into the whole argument of government about anti-terror law and all of these things that they're trying to push forward that are also controversial.
Yeah.
Yes. And I do remember the first attempts at suicide attacks in the Philippines was in mga 1997 or 1998. And these were done by foreigners pa. It was an Egyptian and a Jordanian who tried to attack the 6th or 7th Infantry Division headquarters in Cotabato in Awang.
Oo nga, hindi nga ba meron na nung...
Oh, yeah.
Oo nga, na
ang
Kapag
chismis
Pilipino daw,
noon, they were
hindi
trying to
daw
convince
Pilipino
Filipinos to
suicide.
to do it themselves eh. Pero as an example, they did it na.
Yan na nga
Baka
eh.
na-train na. Baka na-train na ng ano, ng
Kaya delikado
ano ba
eh.
yun? Al-Qaeda or whatever, diba?
Ang hirap
I
eh.
mean,
Di ba sabi nga nila noon, kapag mga Pilipino, we will commit homicide pero hindi suicide eh. Eh ngayon, hindi na pwedeng sabihin, kaya mas delikado ngayon. And it's so hard kasi it's happening during the pandemic, ang dami-dami natin problema.
talaga. Yeah.
Eh, paano pa yung problema yan? Ito pa isang ito yung topic natin ngayong gabi. Na
Yun
pinagkakaabalahan.
ang hinihintay ko.
Ano naman yung segue?
Oo nga eh. Di ba? Pati political
Paano mo
problem.
nagawa yun?
Pati political problem eh. Habang
Okay.
nagkakabahan natin.
Pero kakaibang revolusyon to,
Di ba? Kaya revolutionary government pa tayo. Ha? Andiyan na ba yung guest natin?
Yeah, I think he's here already. Yeah, I think he's here. Let's bring him in already. Well, we're talking about proposals for a what they call a RevGov or revolutionary government. And joining us tonight will be Interior Undersecretary Epimaco Densing. Sir, welcome again. Welcome back to One News. It's good to have you back.
Yeah, good evening. Natawa rin ako sa sinabi ni Amy kanina.
Alin dun? Yung segue?
Yung problema.
Well, totoo naman, sir.
Teka, bakit
Sir,
ako?
anyway. Well, sir, kasi ganito, sir. Well, to be honest about it, kasi we do remember mga 2 years ago, you were also involved in a RevGov proposal, and that was several years ago. I understand that. I didn't see you in this recent one. The one I saw in this recent one was Usec Martin Dino. He was in the photographs in Bulacan. Now we wanted to bring you in to ask you, well, among other things. First of all, are you still involved in this group? Because I understand you're the honorary chairman of one of the movements involved here. At least you were. So are you still involved? And what makes this particular push for RevGov different from what was being pushed 2 years ago?
Well, first of all, I'd like to make a disclaimer. Whatever I say tonight is my opinion and does not reflect the agency, because I remember 2 years back, I almost filed a libel case against a newspaper for saying that I was moving around to push for a revolutionary government. So this is my opinion and not an agency position. No? And yes, I was involved 3 years back, and it ended after the fact that the president did not accept our offer to take the lead in a revolutionary government. So after that, since there was no acceptance, then there's no RevGov, because under a revolutionary setup, the leadership is given only to one person, to a specific person. And in that time, we were giving it to President Duterte, who unfortunately did not accept. So since there's no leader to handle the RevGov at that time, which we were pushing, there's no RevGov. Now, what's the difference between before than what was pushed last weekend? Well, first of all, for us in government, we respect their opinion. No? That's their personal opinion. They want to express their personal thoughts that they want a revolutionary government, so be it. But the major difference is there is, in my opinion, there is no mass support for this group coming in. Unlike 3 years back, where we were able to made a simultaneous call of at least 1 million. I remember that was November 30, 2017. 1 million people going out all over the Philippines in the major cities to ask President Duterte to accept the leadership of a revolutionary government. So it was really a mass action. The numbers were there. Unfortunately, he did not accept. Much more this group, who are also my friends, over the weekend, but I don't think they have the numbers. And the timing, the timing is really not so good, because all of us are focusing our attention on this COVID-19 pandemic. So I don't join their group for purposes. I was not even invited in the first place.
Yes, sir. Pero sir, it's still the same group, diba? Yung Mayor Rodrigo Duterte movement, it's still the same group.
It's different. In November 2017, there were a lot of groups who joined us in that 1 million people who came out in the different cities all over the Philippines, but they were not part of it. MRRD and ECC was not part of that November 17 mass gathering to call for a RevGov. This one is MRRD and ECC. I think it is still being chaired by former TESDA chief Jean Mamundyong, and Bobby Brillante is serving as one of their spokespersons. So this is entirely a different group from that of in November 30, 2017.
But don't you have the same goals, basically to install President Duterte as a one-man government in effect, no? And to push for the reforms that you want. So in terms of the goals, pareho, hindi masyadong nagkakaiba. Ang tanong, why do you have to do that when President Duterte is already president? There's a people's initiative option if you want changes in the constitution from the grassroots. Why do you have to resort to a call for a revolutionary government?
Well, at that time, no, and they're using the same script that I did 3 years ago. First of all, we were pushing for federalism, and in my opinion at that time, federalism will not happen because Congress will not let it happen. Okay, so since Congress will not let it happen, the people has a right to revolt. That right to the revolt is innate in any constitution all over the world, especially in a democratic setup. You cannot see that word in the Constitution, but it is innate in the Constitution. That's why it says there in our preamble, we the sovereign Filipino people, we are the supreme power. In other words, what I'm saying at that time is we need to amend the Constitution, if not scrap it, because the 1987 Constitution is the root cause of the country's why the country is not thriving as an economic power in Asia and anywhere part, because we are being stunted by the many provisions of the 1987 Constitution. So it's the 1987 Constitution which has caused many rich people to become much richer, Filipinos, and it also stunted our growth that made the Filipinos not coming out of poverty. It's this Constitution that we are revolting against. That's why we wanted to change it, because the federal system of government is something that we feel which will promote economic growth not only in the national capital region but also in the countryside. So what we wanted is to really change the Constitution, because we felt the 1987 Constitution, which is already 33 years old until now, has never been amended, and it's the rich which became richer because they've used the Constitution to their advantage. Who do you think made money out of the utilities? It's the Filipino rich, because the foreign investors cannot invest in utilities in our country. So the Filipinos took advantage of that. The Salim group of Indonesia was able to turn around and made investments in the country through Manny Pangilinan, because they knew they had the market. So in other words, power is up, the cost of telecommunications is high, primarily because it is limited to the Filipino oligarchs. That's what this 1987 Constitution has done for us.
Okay, for disclosure,
Usec,
Manny Pangilinan is the chairman of TV5 and Signal. Para lang ma-disclose.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a shareholder of MPI.
Yeah, no, Usec,
It's only disclosure lang.
I won't go into the arguments for a RevGov and so on. As you said, Malacanang has washed its hand of this. The senators, Congress are saying there's no way, this is a ridiculous proposal. So I won't go down that line. I will ask you, in your capacity as an official, not in your previous involvements, but in your involvement with DILG, your official hat right now. Because a lot of people are saying, okay, I can hear your point about free expression, may karapatan sila. But let's face it, if this was another group asking for a RevGov, and hindi si President Duterte ang manok nila, government will be invoking anti-terror laws already. They will be, the police, the PNP are raiding printing presses of leftist organizations because sabi nila hindi nila gusto yung mga piniprint. Why the double standard? Pagdating sa ibang grupo who are saying, kailangan palitan ng gobyerno, not even the Constitution, palitan ng gobyerno, we can already imagine the anti-terror law being invoked for this. And yet for this group, it's good enough to say na, hindi naman namin tinanggap yung invitation eh.
Hindi, wala. Hindi naman siya, malinaw naman sa anti-terror law yung mga definitions of what is terrorism. And I don't think, those are also propaganda na kinukuha yung they never invoke the anti-terror law in those raiding that you are talking about, but more on the anti-subversive law in the revised penal code. But never the anti-terror law kasi malinaw ang definition ng terrorism. And what they've done dun sa sinasabi mong raid is not terrorism. What they did in Clark is also not terrorism. So to me,
But you see my point. I mean, but you will acknowledge my point. I mean, look at what you're doing right now. You're going into, hindi, iba naman yun, iba naman to. Iyan yung tanong ng mga tao, bakit iba yun at bakit iba to? Pareho lang naman. In fact, kayo, you're going beyond that. You're like, or not kayo, hindi kayo. Let me correct myself. But this group and the group that you had before was calling for a scrapping of the Constitution, not even a changing of the government. The other people are just calling, whether it's the anti-terror law or anti-subversive law, the point is the law comes down hard and sometimes recklessly when the groups are, hindi si President Duterte yung manok nila. Ngayon si President Duterte yung manok, okay lang, free expression. I mean, I'm on that side as well of free expression, but ang tanong ng mga tao is, won't you acknowledge that there's a double standard here?
Well, at the moment, I won't. And I don't see any double standard at the moment. Again, if you're talking about the application of the anti-terror law, it's not applicable in any case at that moment because klaro na ang training ng ating kapulisan and even the armed forces for that matter kung ano ang applicability ng anti-terror law. I'm part of the National Task Force LCAC, heading the SUCBEM Sectoral Unity Cluster. And we never talk about it primarily because there's no way of adapting that law to whatever they're doing right now. But it's clear to us for us to end subversion in our country. Thus, specifically itong NPA, CPP, NDF. But again, hindi applicable. That's why we never talk about it because it's not applicable under the situation. Doon sa nangyari sa Hulo, yun applicable ang anti-terror law. So there's no double standard. We are very consistent at least at this point. Because Robbie, sasabihin ko sa iyo, if there was a double standard, ako mismo magsasalita. And I will not back out saying that there was na ginamit ang anti-terror law for something that is unlawful to the gain of government. Ako mismo magsasalita. At the moment, in my analysis, in my observation, I think there's no double standard and there's no improper application to the law at least at the moment.
Usec, let me be a bit more specific. Hindi anti-terror law. Let me be more specific with Article 142 of the Revised Penal Code. That's the provision against inciting to sedition. No,
Yes.
it's inciting. Remember, the anti-subversion law has been repealed already, so wala na tayong subversion law. We're really talking about sedition and inciting to sedition. In the case of Article 142 of the Revised Penal Code, sedition, inciting sedition is any act that tends to get people to act to disturb or obstruct any lawful officer in executing the functions of his or her office. In this particular case, doesn't that apply? You're looking at RevGov where the legislature and the judiciary would be prevented from conducting their offices, their jobs, their functions. Wouldn't that be an inciting to sedition?
No. Nagsasalita lang sila na gusto namin palitan ng gobyerno through this way. Ayaw na namin ng konstitusyon. Yun ang sinasabi ng tao.
Yes, sir. But hindi nga ho ba that's inciting to sedition? By the very use of this particular law against people in the legal left as well, it's the same thing. I'm talking about the legal left. I'm not talking about the People's Army, di ba? Inciting to sedition is used against the legal left as well, not just yung mahanapan ng bomba, mahanapan ng baril, also mahanapan ng subversive documents. Diba? And subversive documents are basically that.
Inciting to sedition has the intention of taking over government. Sila hindi. Gusto lang nila palitan ang sistema ng gobyerno by using a revolutionary form of government. RevGov ang tawag.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But that's it. Diba?
Has already ruled that the revolutionary government, even of Cory Aquino, is valid and legal. So there's
Now,
already a Supreme Court decision on this, and that all Supreme Court decisions are part of the laws of the land. So
Yes,
using
sir.
that
We understand. We understand,
resource,
sir. That's
valid.
true.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
true. It's valid. It's true if you win. For example, if Aguinaldo won his revolutionary government would be in existence, it would be legal. He would not be labeled as a subversive. But in his particular case, he lost. So until it happens that there's a complete takeover, that would be illegal. That would be subversion. That would be sedition, hindi ba?
and Yusek, let's get the
I'm
timelines
being
clear.
conceptual lang, conceptual.
Let's take get the timelines clear as well. I mean, the Cory Aquino government did start out as a revolutionary government, and then it paved the path eventually for a new constitution that was ratified by the people. After
Correct.
that came the Supreme Court decision acknowledging the actions of the revolutionary government, but it was now the constitutional government. This is totally different. You have the constitution, you want to throw away the constitution and ignore it. I mean, can you will at least help educate the public that
The-
the government, when we talk about the government and we talk about the state, we are not talking about the incumbent president. Part of the government is the Congress and the judiciary that you want to ignore and put aside.
Kaya nga, Robby, that's what I'm
That's what
saying.
you're trying to
That's
understand.
what
It's
I'm
not
saying.
about President Duterte because your argument is that it's the same president anyway, but you will agree with us and you will help us educate the public that President Duterte is not the government, he is not the state. Any
He's
incumbent
not.
is
Yeah,
not the
correct.
government. Yeah.
Under the
So,
present constitution, he is not. He's the president of our country under the present constitution. That's why, if ever there was such massive support, just for theoretical discussion purposes, and we were able to say we no longer the 1987 constitution is now set aside. We are now putting a provisional constitution while we are making a new constitution, federal constitution for that matter. We need a leader temporarily to lead our government. And at this point, and at least these people and us at the time, a few years back, we wanted President Duterte to lead. But in the absence of that, there's no revolutionary government to talk about. That's why I'm saying, with all due respect to my friends from MRD and ECC, this will not have any this will not have any success because of the absence of the mass support. That's number one. Number two, all of us, including myself, who is a RevGov supporter, supposedly at least in concept today, will not support this because all of us will focus on COVID-19 pandemic. So the timing is really not there. There's no mass support. I mean, they were saying 300 people present in Clark. I would say it's even less. Again, with all due respect to our friends, let's focus on the problem right now rather than this one. And we are one in the government right now that we will not put our attention or sway aside our attention to this rep group that's being pushed by our friends right now.
Usec Densing, but you are also part of a group that's pushing for constitutional reforms.
Yes.
Kumusta naman yung status nun? Is it still alive? Kasi medyo na-sideline siya netong all this talk about the RevGov eh. Lalong sumama yung yung perception ng mga tao about the effort. Is it still alive, this effort?
Yes. If there's any official position that I can make in behalf of the agency, we are still pushing for the constitutional reforms, no? And this is being pushed. We have a program with that with the DILG in core. There's a push, but medyo nagiging mabagal because the directive to us is really focus our attention with COVID-19 pandemic.
And in the meantime, merong mga nagsasuggest, including Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana, na dapat daw imbestigan yung mga tao behind this proposal for a revolutionary government. Is there any appetite in the agency to push through with any kind of investigation? I'm asking because you're in charge of the PNP.
None yet. Unless there's an official complaint or an official directive to us, that's the only time we will move rather than doing this motu proprio. Because as far as we're concerned, at least at this moment, they're just expressing their opinion about a change in the system of government, no, from the current unitary to federalism. They just saw to it that to be able to make that shift, they needed to use a different method, no, to be able to make that change. Instead of using the constitutional way, they wanted to do the extra constitutional way, which is using a revolutionary form. But again, I don't think it will fly. So unless there's a complaint or somebody directs us to make that investigation, we will not, at least at the moment, at least this present time.
And to be fair to Usec Densing, si Usec Densing hindi kasama dito sa renewed push for RevGov. We're talking about 3 years ago pa. But Usec Densing, yun nga, si Usec Martin Dino was there. He was there in the photos outside Baraswain Church with the group pushing for RevGov. How does that apply now to people in government? People in government who are pushing for putting aside the Constitution, not through amendments, but through a revolutionary extra-constitutional means. Doesn't that put incumbent officials in a questionable position?
Well, I was told that when they launched that in Baraswain Church in Bulacan, it was a holiday. So he has a right to be there and express his opinion. When I expressed my opinion 3 years ago, it was November 3rd, also a holiday. So I made sure that I can express personal opinion on a holiday. So I think that applies.
Okay.
Usec, let me ask as well. Let me ask as well, because PNP is DILG has its mandate over the PNP as well. Is it enough for the chief of police to say, I was invited pero dinecline ko naman yung invitation? I mean, given all the controversy and the questions as to whether or not this is crossing the line, we also hear the point that, but this is free expression. These are people. Same with the legal left, no, and same with anybody who says, no, I don't want this government. Palitan natin itong gobyerno. Ayaw ko si President Duterte. Karapatan din nilang mag-ano na yan. But when you're calling for extra constitutional moves, is it enough for the chief of police to say na hindi ko naman tinanggap yung invitation eh? But in the meantime, he's acknowledging that there is this extra constitutional movement. Was it enough for him to just decline it, or is it incumbent on our officials to look deeper and to keep following and monitoring this movement?
Well, una sa lahat, wala naman tayong magagawa if the organizers want to invite anybody, no? They can invite. I was told they also invited even the AFP chief of staff, no, and of course si General Gamboa. Because again, if there was to be a successful RevGov, there should be a support of the military, no? Because it's very clear, even in the Constitution.
No, but Usec, I'm sorry, Usec. We're not asking the politics here and the practicalities and did they plan this out well. That wasn't the question. The question is, these are public officials. Same with Mr. Dino. These are public officials. What's the proper thing for them to do when confronted with something that is arguable, debatable, but potentially extra-constitutional and illegal? Yeah, the question is being put to the DOJ. The question is being put to government. Does this cross a line in terms of inciting to sedition? Does this cross the line? So in other words, there is a question of illegality. The question is, when that question is posed and the police and the defense officials are invited to commit something that some people are alleged is illegal and unconstitutional and potentially treasonous, don't they have a responsibility to go beyond? Hindi ko naman tinanggap invitation.
Well, again, inuulit ko, the invitation will always be there. They have no control over it. But as
they're aware of the Constitution, sir. That's what we're saying. They're aware of the invitation. They're acknowledging it is a real event.
But as officials who swore that we will protect and defend the Constitution, we should always decline. Okay. The only thing that you can do is express an opinion. That's the best you can do. But we should always decline and not to be involved, because our role as officials, especially that we swore to the Constitution, is to protect and defend the Constitution. That was why I was telling you, in the few years back, I was already willing to resign.
No, but Usec, that's my question. Shouldn't protecting the Constitution have an active component other than passively declining an invitation? They're the law enforcers. They are the armed defenders of the Constitution. Shouldn't their role go beyond just declining an invitation? As you
Well,
said, it's
first
their
of all, it's
job
not
to protect the
illegal.
Constitution that this group is calling to scrap.
Well, first of all, it's not illegal. It's not inciting to sedition. Much for it's not necessarily unconstitutional. Because as long as this has been done by the people themselves to express an opinion, to express themselves their thoughts, and they want to mass gather because they have an opinion, then you cannot do anything about it. Okay, again, I'm very clear that I mean, it's not illegal nor a violation of Article 142 of the revised penal code. But what is essential here that we have to look into is our involvement. Because if you're a government official who swore to your constitution and you go there to actively participate, especially on official time, then that becomes something that we can investigate. The point here is, when did you do that? Is it during your official time or not? When did you express that opinion? That's why here that
But
it's at the very
you
beginning.
said you're effectively saying you're only liable if it's done between Monday to Friday 9 to 5, and everything
Hindi
else beyond
holiday.
that solved na tayo. Kasi po with the same argument, Martin Dino was there nga, and he is a public official. You were there 3 years ago. You're a public official. Your only argument in that for that point is that it was done during a holiday. Do you really think that carries any weight? That argument carries any weight? Na holiday naman, so kahit anong gawin ko, kahit unconstitutional or extra-constitutional, walang problema.
Well, even government officials kasi, we also have that right to express our thoughts.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Wala
sir.
naman tayo
And
ano dyan
understood.
Anybody,
That's understood.
anybody, whether you're in government or not. And the second is how active you become part of that group. Gano'n ka ba ka-active? So, yun ang titingnan natin eh. Ako, although I was expressing myself on that, I was never active in the organizing. But I was telling them, this is the only way for us to amend the Constitution if you want to, because Congress will not amend the Constitution. Primarily because the Constitution, they benefit from the Constitution. So you must, sabi ko sa kanila, you must exercise your right as a people. And if we move forward, sabi ko at this time, if we move forward and the president has kung tatanggapin niya yung leadership, I was willing to resign because I will no longer defend the Constitution to whom I swear with.
Exactly. I mean, exactly. That's a good point.
Sir, so by that argument, do you only defend the Constitution during office hours? No, seriously.
What
Would you only defend the Constitution during office hours?
Hindi, I was
Or
saying,
during non-holidays?
Yung sabi ko lang, express your opinion and
No, but
join
exactly,
the group.
exactly, sir. I mean, can I use those words precisely and rephrase the question? Shouldn't every public official who is pledged to defend the Constitution, isn't the minimum requirement for officials who will defend the Constitution be that they will not campaign to throw away the Constitution? Shouldn't the minimum requirement be for a public official be that they will, if you're going to be a defender of the Constitution, you have to believe in defending the Constitution
Correct,
and
correct.
not be on the side of changing.
Correct.
In other
Correct.
words, shouldn't
But
these
we also have
officials
an
who are
opinion.
backing this and refusing to protect the Constitution,
Correct. But we
aren't
have an
they
opinion
liable
on
at the very least
Constitution.
administratively?
Yeah. But we have an opinion about the
That includes
Constitution.
the police. You're saying yes. So that includes the police. That includes the chief of police. That includes the defense secretary. Correct.
But we have what I'm saying is, despite the fact that we have to defend and protect it, we also have an opinion on it, which becomes part of a potential change in the document itself. That's why that document itself, that paper, is still subject to changes, amendments for that matter, because we have our own opinion.
Yes, but you can have your opinion and nobody will go after them for expressing their opinion. But you can go after them for their administratively, for their position, di ba? Because they have their opinion, but they have the mandate and the responsibility of public officials.
Yeah.
So by all means, have your opinion and express it all you want. But you have no right to be a pledged and authorized and mandated defender of the Constitution if you're not defending it.
Correct. Okay, you're correct. In fact, we have to analyze the whole setup, even the presence of Usec Dino. Kailangan tingnan muna natin. Was he there just to be invited? Ano bang sinabi niya? So, I mean, we have to look at it in the totality rather than judging a person or a government official just because they were present.
Okay, Yusek, then one last question na lang. I mean, those are good questions. Are you going to ask those questions of Mr. Dino? Are you going to formally investigate and ask those questions of Mr. Dino?
Well, I have to
As the
defer.
ILG.
I
As the
will have
ILG. You,
Yeah, I will have to defer to our head of agency. So it's either Secretary Anyo or our OIC right now, si Yusek Florese. I will have to
but
defer
your
to him.
position, but your position, since kayo na rin yung nag-outline ng mga gagandang tanong para kay Mr. Dino, your position is he should be investigated.
Yes, he should be asked why he was there.
Yusek, isa na lang. Kung yung grupo, ang gusto nila ibang tao ilagay as head of the revolutionary government, hindi si Presidente Duterte, will that be considered sedition?
Not even. Again, it's not calling for a revgo or putting somebody there. It's how you push for the change in government. So inciting to this to sedition legally, gusto mong palitan ang gobyerno because you want to change all of it. Hindi ito mismo sa tao. So kung pag sinabi nila, gusto namin si Leni Robredo, so by all means, that's your opinion.
Hindi siya papailan ng inciting yung grupo.
Marami ang gusto mawala na si Presidente para mapalitan nga ni VP supposed VP Len, So we're not filing cases against these people for inciting to sedition because it's not.
Okay.
But I think in those particular cases, sir, they're asking for the president to step down, not a revolution against the president, not unless you're talking about the New People's Army.
Or for that matter, not a revolution against
Wouldn't that be a different thing altogether? To call for a revolution to replace everybody versus asking somebody to step down.
That's why sinasabi ko, freedom of expression, yun ang kanilang pananaw eh. They want the president to step down, to be replaced, o mag-resign siya, or umalis siya, or palitan na kagad ni Leni. Meron mga ganung mga opinion eh.
But in that case, kasi that would be within the Constitution. That would not be extra-constitutional.
That's what I'm saying. Calling for a revolution. Kung ang piece of paper that is governing our country is no longer beneficial to us, it promotes poverty, it promotes rich people to become richer. Why would we not change it? And the people has to right to know. Yung mga tao natin, kaya nga kailangan matuto sila kung ano yung gamit ng konstitusyon sa buhay nila. Kung malaman nila na sila pala ay naiisa ng Constitution ng 1987 Constitution, tingin mo hindi yan sila lalabas. Lalabas sila. Kasi malalaman nila, kaya noon pala ang yaman-yaman nila, Ayala, dahil sila lang, 2 kumpanya lang ang may hawak ng cellphone natin, dahil hindi makapasok yung mga foreign investors to invest more and to bring down the prices of cellphone rates. Kasi sa Pilipino lang eh. So for the past 33 years, sila lang kumikita. O pag nalaman ng taong bayan yan, tingin ko hindi lalabas yan. Kasi they are not just educated of the Constitution and how it affects their lives till today.
Okay. Well, maraming salamat, Interior Undersecretary Epimaco Densing. Sir, huwag kayong magsasawa sa amin. Masaya naman kayong kausap eh. Thank you, sir, for joining us tonight.
And thank you. And again, I like to invoke the disclaimer.
Yes, sir. That was understood when we started. We started off with that. That your involvement was 3 years ago.
Yeah, salamat.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Salamat pa.
We will just pause for a break, so please stay with us.
Welcome back to the Chiefs. We're now in the final stage of our conversation, and we'd now like to welcome Congressman Edcel Lagman of Albay's 1st District. Good evening, Congressman.
Good evening, Ami.
Welcome to the Chiefs po. We just had a lively conversation with Anders.
I,
Hi, sir.
I
Then-
heard
Natatawa si Congressman.
I heard part of your conversation.
Kayo po, so itutuloy po namin sa inyo. What do you think of this proposal for a revolutionary government to shift to federalism at this point?
At any point in time,
Okay, sige.
that has no constitutional or legal pedigree. If we want to change the Constitution or introduce amendments to the Constitution, we have to follow the mandatory process outlined in our Constitution, which is either the initiative or the proposal would have to come from a Constituent Assembly, from Constitutional Convention, or from a People's Initiative. If we would like to change officials in the government, we have to wait for regular elections because that is the democratic and republican mode of changing officials in the government, not through a revolution by any name whatsoever.
Yung proponents nun, Congressman, are they liable for anything? For sedition, for whatever?
Well, I think that has to be made under a serious study because these proponents are wanting to change the Constitution. They want to change the form of government, and they want to make a new set of officials under a revolutionary government led by the president. So these factors should be weighed in whether they would constitute the element of inciting to sedition.
Yeah.
Pero Congressman, let me zoom in to public officials. People who are in office already, for example, si Usec Martin Vino, who was there nung Saturday sa Barasuing Church with the group. And you had, of course, Usec Epimaco Densing 3 years ago who was also pushing the same thing. When public officials are involved, tapos may invitation pa, di ba, with the PNP chief to be there, with the AFP chief to be there, and so on down the line. When you already involve public officials, are they liable or should they be taking active steps against it?
Well, a public official in the workplace is a public functionary 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. So you cannot be a private citizen when there is a holiday or a Sunday or an anniversary, but you are a public official because you have taken your oath of office, which includes defending the Constitution of the Republic. So any meeting which would change that Constitution or change the duly elected officials would merit a public official's disclaimer of not attending or of saying that such gathering could constitute something which would be illegal.
Yeah. Congressman, so same question I asked Usec. Is it enough? Do you think it was enough for the chief of police to say na, yes, I am aware of that activity. In fact, I was invited, pero dinecline ko naman yung invitation. Or was it incumbent on the chief of police to take on any further action?
Well, it is good enough that he declined the invitation, but it would have been better if he denounced that meeting and its objectives.
Well, they have denounced it by saying that it's really nothing more than a distraction. Do you think that's sufficient?
No, I don't think that would be adequate because a denunciation should be in a stronger language that this cannot be done. You cannot make any charter change or amendments to the Constitution against the very Constitution of the Republic, and you cannot have a coup uh, uh, which could be led by the incumbent president against his own government so that he could lead a revolutionary government. I think these have all the earmarks of illegality.
Mhm.
In the case
I-
of Usec Densing, he was reprimanded by the DILG Secretary Anyo then. That was 2 years ago. Is a reprimand also a sufficient sanction?
Well, I think my answer would be the same. It would not be adequate
Not
because
also,
because a reprimand could lead to the same offense as what happened now, that there are public functionaries like officials of the DILG who attended the meeting.
so you're saying that legal action is necessary already. It warrants a legal action
I
as in
think
a case against
I
them.
think I think the Department of Justice should make a thorough study on this issue and find out whether the facts and events surrounding this meeting and its objectives would constitute a violation of the revised penal code, like inciting to sedition.
Congressman, I noticed you described it as a coup against his own government. You're referring to the president.
Well,
Do you suspect that? Well, I know Malacanang has denied it already, but do you still suspect that there might be some elements within Malacanang who might have a hand in this movement?
Well, I think this movement would not come out in the open without any official sanction from those in the administration. I am not saying who in the administration would be supporting such move, but please remember that they are using the name of the president.
Uh,
Yes.
Sir, around 2 years ago, the
Congressman,
president
what
himself
about
brought this
the-
up. Remember, around 2 years ago, the president himself flirted with the idea openly of a RevGov. That was 2 years ago. Do you think there's any connection?
Well, I could not see the connection yet at the moment because at that time, the revolutionary government was foisted against the destabilization of the government. But in this case, there is no allegation of destabilization. But most probably, we have to connect it with the present situation where there are popular doubts as to the uh, health of the president. So, if that is so, then this movement for a revolutionary government most probably would be an uncertain situation of a contingency wherein the succession to the republic
Nawala si
Sir,
wherein,
go ahead, sir.
wherein the succession to the office of the president under our constitution will be disrupted.
In the meantime, Congressman, we're getting distracted from the main preoccupation now of the government actually, which is the pandemic. I would like to digress a little. Kasi pinasa na ng House kanina. Yeah, ni-ratify ng House yung Bayanihan 2. And you voted yes to the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act with grave reservations. Ano po ba yung mga grave reservations na yon?
Yes, in the first place, Ami, that relief and stimulus package under the Bayanihan 2 is so meager. I even call it pathetic because the amount of 166.5 billion uh, is so small to have a credible response to the pandemic, wherein the Philippines is number one in Southeast Asia with respect to the number of COVID positive patients. And moreover, we have an expanding war chest, which could adequately have a better or more appropriations in order to combat the pandemic, like, for example, giving more assistance to socio-economic relief to distressed citizens and to displaced workers, also to conduct a very thorough prevention, protection of frontliners, treatment of patients, conducting of mass testing, and also an appropriation which would be viable and adequate for the acquisition or procurement of the vaccine. And also, in order to help distressed companies which were ravaged by the pandemic. But that amount is too small. As a matter of fact, if we compare it to the 275 billion for the Bayanihan to that for the Bayanihan one, Bayanihan 2 is only about 60% or even lower than 60% of the Bayanihan 1 appropriation, and it is even only 12% of the 1.8 trillion Arise bill, which has been approved by the House on third and final reading and has been sent to the Senate, and the Senate has not acted on this because they were influenced. It was influenced, the Senate, by Secretary of Finance
Dominguez.
Dominguez, that the government can only afford to fund
Yes, sir. Your
about
reaction to that, please.
140 billion. Yes,
140.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So anong reaction nyo nga dun sa sinasabi nila Secretary Dominguez and also Secretary Jokno na wala ng pondo at ayaw naman nilang lakihan pa yung exposure natin sa mga creditors?
well, the fact is we have sufficient funds because we were able to procure grants and loans from multinationals like ADB, the World Bank, in the International Investment Infrastructure Bank. And also, the Bureau of the Treasury was able to raise sufficient funds. According to the Bureau, by end of June, 1.2 trillion has been generated in local or domestic borrowings. And then also, by August, about more than $500 million pesos had been generated in the auction of what is known as the premium bonds or the retail treasury bonds, and more are scheduled for auction. So the totality of this is that we have a little over 1 trillion to really respond to the pandemic. And if we compare our stimulus package to those of the other Asian neighbors, we fail so much in comparison because that 166.5 trillion only translate to 3 billion US dollars. Other countries in Asia, in Southeast Asia have much more stimulus package which they were able to adapt much earlier than the Philippines.
Pero Congressman, meron
I just wonder why in
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. Congressman, the message is very loud. And, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
You're wondering.
Yes, Congressman.
I was wondering why we have not used these multilateral grants and loans as well as the domestic borrowings generated by the Bureau of the National Treasury to support the Bayanihan 2 and have a better and more appropriations. Under the funding sources enumerated in Section 11 of Bayanihan 2, nowhere is there any funding source from the foreign and domestic borrowings of the Philippines. And also the report of the Department of Budget and Management with respect to what has been released so far for the COVID response does not also include any availment of funds sourced from the multilaterals and from the domestic borrowings. Are these foreign borrowings and domestic borrowings also under lockdown? Or is there uh, a partisan motive that this would be used in another enterprise? That is a question I would like to throw to the Duterte government, more particularly to the Department of Finance.
Well, in the meantime, Congressman, yun yung tanong ng mga tao, and we would like to gauge the confidence of Congress and congressmen. Are you confident that at least as far as those funds are concerned, we can still keep track of everything has gone and everything has been spent?
I'm sorry, your voice was garbled. I could not understand well the question.
Your
Can-
signal is choppy.
Yeah,
Okay.
can you please repeat,
Yeah.
Ruby, the question?
Yeah, can you hear me now? Can you
A
hear me now, Congressman?
a little
Okay,
bit.
yun din po yung tanong ng mga tao eh. So we want to gauge the confidence of our legislators, especially those at the House of Representatives. What is your confidence that at the end of the day, whatever all our questions, there will be a proper accounting of how government has been spending all of this? Or are you starting to lose confidence that baka bukod sa hindi, baka dumating yung araw that we cannot even count for all of this, whatever the instrument?
Well, in the first place, I think what has been appropriated under Bayanihan 2 is very small, is meager, and could not make a positive and adequate response to the pandemic. Number two, I will have to call for the administration of the president, more particularly the Department of Finance, to make a disclosure how much actually has been availed of in foreign loans or foreign grants. Number two, for the Bureau of Treasury under the Department of Finance to tell the people how much domestic borrowings have been generated. These are very important questions because our children and grandchildren will have to have the burden of paying the debt service for these domestic and foreign borrowings, and much worse if they find out that their parents were not able to really benefit from these foreign and domestic borrowings which they have to pay.
Okay. Maraming salamat po, Congressman Edcel Lagman. Thank you for joining us to discuss those two issues. Ang laki ko ng ngiti ninyo. But thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Lucy,
Thank you,
Ami,
sir.
and Rob. Thank you very much
Salamat, sir.
for this
Thanks, sir.
opportunity.
Salamat po. Maraming salamat po.
Okay. Go ahead. Who wants to say something?
Oh,
Sino ba?
Basta holiday.
Wala akong
holiday,
masabi.
Bagay yan eh.
Wala akong masabi sa mga argumento.
Well, but again, to be fair, si Usec Densing kasi napagsabihan siya ni Secretary Anyo 3 years ago eh. So he didn't take part anymore in the weekend event. Although si Usec Martin Dino was still there.
Pero nakakatawa Walang yung ano, no, yung parang pag-holiday. Pag-holiday.
So you only defend the Constitution during office hours.
Ah.
Ano yan? Ganun ba?
Di ba next Monday holiday? Di ba next Monday holiday ulit? Holiday di ba ulit next Monday?
Maraming holiday.
Bak-
Maraming
mag-
holiday na natitira.
Maganda ka, Ami. Baka may malaking balita sa Monday.
Habang kami ngayon eh.
Ay, teka muna. Are we expecting some sort of announcement and address tonight?
Tonight,
Ayun, yes.
Well, dapat, yung nga lang, I suppose they're starting late eh. Kasi kaninang hapon, Secretary Roque was on the way pa lang via C-130 eh.
Oo.
So Lord knows what time they started and what time they'll end.
Nakahanda na
And
siguro.
if it's going to be recorded, baka i-edit pa yan.
Medyo maganda-ganda na
Bakit
siya.
edit na?
Sabi ng Octa Research, we might flatten the curve
okay, magpa-flatten na. Yeah.
by September. Something good, ano?
Yeah, that's true. Although I'm right now I'm thoroughly confused which wave or curve we're talking about after so many.
Depende.
Hindi, yun naman
Well,
yung
Flatten lang, pero hindi pa raw bababa.
bumabagay yung
Stabilize the trend.
Yung OPA, di ba, are not parati ang ine-emphasize nila.
Yeah, they are not.
So yun yung tinitingnan.
Malapit na raw sa 1 eh. Malapit na sa 1. So, pag
Although they-
below 1,
Yeah.
flatten na. Yeah.
But they're also quick to point out that yung R0 mabilis magbago ah.
well, yan
Mabilis.
Hindi
They
lang
also
yun.
pointed that out. Mabilis magbago yung R0.
Not
Kasi
only
raw-
that, remember whatever numbers they're reporting, that's still coming just as
Yes.
ngayon bumubukas pa lang under DPQ. So whatever numbers they're citing, that was at the tail end of the MECQ. So we will find out. And they also did say, of course, when every time the situation changes, you have to face for some change. It's only logical to expect na pagka nag-open up, we still have to recalculate again.
And usually, when practice lang may disclaimer that the numbers are really dirty. The numbers are not really that reliable. They get the numbers late, and sometimes the numbers have to be revised. So that's another factor to put in.
But
Anyway, that's
nung may positive sa news, no? Nakita ko rin kung gaano kahirap talaga i-implement, i-contain, no? Hindi mo alam kung yung first level lang yung i-quarantine mo or yung second level lang. Alam mo, hindi mo alam kung saan ka titigil. So, ipapatest mo ba lahat yan? Pero kahit ipatest mo, nangyari yung contact 10 days ago. Di ba yung mapapaisip ka, so sino ba talaga? So I can imagine how difficult it is on a nationwide scale.
Napapaisip tuloy ako, ba't ako nandito?
Kaya nga,
Hindi, siguro mas nag-iingat yung mga tao ngayon. Pag ngayon nakikita gaano kahirap,
Yes.
gaano na-imperwisyo ginagawa mo.
yes, ang hirap talaga.
Diba?
Yeah.
So medyo nag-iingat siguro. Kaya tama
Sige,
siguro.
pauwiin niyo na ako! Pauwiin niyo na ako!
Okay.
and it's only a Monday, huh? It's only a Monday. We have 4 days to go before the weekend. So advance happy weekend, and that will be all for this weekend. For this Monday edition of the Chiefs, we hope to discuss here. We'll keep the conversation going. I'm Edling Alpha News.
I'm Ami Pamindon of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News.